Welcome to Drinking Bros, presented by GhostBed.com. Yeah, welcome to Drinking Bros, kids. D'Anthony, we got the MeatEater on the show today.
Yeah, I'm, the meat queen, I guess.
Yeah, you're the meat queen, he's the MeatEater.
Yeah, I don't know what the distinction is exactly.
Well, he's a goddamn man, and you're a little tiny lady. Steven Rinella, how are you, buddy?
Good. How you guys doing?
Man, I'm right as rain. Last time you were on the show, shit got wild.
Oh, did it?
Oh, yeah. It got real wild. I
must have blacked out.
Yeah, you probably did. I remember some of your fans were writing on our page. They were like, what is Steven doing with these two fucking idiots, dude? These two fucking dum-dums. They're not wrong. That's the thing. They're definitely not wrong. Like, you're above us.
It's interesting that they would write that to you and not to me.
They must have watched the interview because they're fans of yours, and they were like, man, what's he doing with those two dummies?
Here we are. Now they're going to be especially pissed.
Exactly. You're an accomplished.
Again.
I know. Back at it. And they're like, why did he come back to those two dummies? Why did he come back there? You're an established author. You've got a huge Netflix show, huge podcast. Your new book is Outdoor Kids in an Inside World. What made you want to write this one?
Oh, man. So it's funny because my oldest boy, I have 3 kids. My oldest boy turns 12 real soon here. And I've had the same agent for a million years, 20-some years, right?
Right.
And the minute my wife got pregnant with our first child, my agent's like, man, someday, you're going to have to write a book about how you bring in today's world, right? Like how you bring a kid up, kind of like the way you were brought up. Cause that shit's becoming hard to pull off.
Yeah.
And I was kind of in one ear and out the other at the time. I didn't really think too much about it because I hadn't done any parenting yet, but I grew up, or I should say, when I had kids, I had a anxiety that I think a lot of my contemporaries have now, parents of young kids, about, how to give them like that aspect of like that sort of like free roaming, muddy, kind of bloody upbringing that I had. I was brought up in rural Michigan. I mean, we had like a neighbor right there, but we lived on a lake. We had tons of woods to roam around in. We could just take off with 22s on our bikes, and go. And we had really, when I say we, my brothers and I and our friends around us, we had just unfettered access to the outdoors and developed these really complex relationships to nature, to the outdoors, led us down various career paths, I mean, it was like foundational, just the amount of time like spent outside in terms of developing, all manner of characteristics that I think are important to develop. But when I had kids, I lived in New York for some years, and my first kids were born there. My third kid was born in Seattle. We live in Montana now, but they've lived in some of the biggest urban areas there are.
Sure.
And I felt a ton of anxiety and apprehension about how I was going to give them that life that I had. And there's this American ideal, that you do better by your kids than what was done by you, right? And people subscribe to that idea. And I was able to achieve that in a lot of ways. But man, I was worried about like, how do you recreate that set of experiences? And
it's like, what do you mean by better? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
I would say the way I would prefer the way I grew up with certain changes to just looking at an iPad 4 inches from my face all the time, right? I think
exactly. But some people measure it right at whatever, access to education, access to, better healthcare, whatever it is. Or is it that you just got to run around in the woods all the time?
Right.
And there's different versions of better. So that's what led me down to this. I'm 12 years into it now, of really committing myself to raising, outdoor kids, right? To have that same sophisticated, complicated relationship to nature and the outdoors that I did. And so it's really, a book I was kind of writing about my experiences, and particularly because so many people reach out to me and other people I work with about these questions. You know, when is it okay to introduce a kid to shooting firearms? When is it okay to, what happens if a little kid watches a deer die, right? Are you going to screw him up for the rest of his life? How do you get everybody out the door? Why do they always lose their mittens? Right? Like all these things that I've been living now for a long time. And so I thought it was time to do that book for people who are suffering those same sets of questions that I struggled with for so many years.
Yeah, and I'm a father myself, and I struggle with the same thing of how much screen time they can have as far as iPads go versus playing outdoors. Dan and I live in Texas, and for example, my kid is off today. There's some Founders Day for the city of Dripping Springs here in Texas. There's like a festival and all this other stuff, which is amazing, and we're all going to it, but he's off of school. When I've got one in preschool, now that's optional. So, he's 8 years old, and he says, hey, I want Jagger to stay home. He's 3. And I was like, all right, great. You can stay home, but you're going to go outside and play today. You're not going to sit in front of an iPad all day. And, initially, you see their faces go down a little bit, and it's like, hey, it's beautiful outside. It's sunny. You have a pool. You have trees, woods. You can do all kinds of things. Go outside and play. And then, they went. But you've got to lay that groundwork down. Otherwise, they will sit inside all goddamn day and sit in front of, YouTube or GTA or whatever it is. But as a parent, part of you is like, or me, at least me, part of me is like, well, I don't want them to be behind with the rest of the world and their friends and everything else electronics-wise, because that is the future. That's where all of this is headed. So it's a difficult juggling act, trying to balance out how much time they should have on a screen versus how much time they should be out in the world itself. And then obviously COVID didn't help with any of this because most kids were inside, and then other kids didn't want to go outside and play with the neighbors because they were worried about getting COVID and X, Y, and Z. And now that everybody's coming out of that, you got to sit back and say, okay, how much time is the right time? What number did you come up with as a parent yourself?
Oh man, this is something that, we fight about this in my house every single day. And you look like someone like here I am, I wrote this book and so someone might be like, well, how could he be suffering from this problem? He wrote a whole damn book about kids in the outdoors, raising outdoor kids. But it's like, I don't have every answer. We fight about screen time every single day. And to get into the idea of, you brought up like just how much COVID affected us. In fact, I wrote a chapter of this book while I had COVID. As soon as the kids were not in school, like they pulled everybody out of school, we went out and bought them all iPads, right? Because they had to they were downloading certain things and doing certain lessons. So like iPads became very much a part of the house. If you gave them, if at any point in time you told my kids, hey, just do whatever you'd like right now. Like, we don't care what you do right now. They would instinctively, absolutely go to that.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
To go play games. So I have not been able to conquer that impulse. I have not gotten into a position, I'd be lying if I said I did, where I conquered that impulse. But we have set like very strict parameters around it. And I hear all the time from people who say, well, my kids don't want to go outside. I can't get them to go outside. It's like, I don't ask my kids what they want to do.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I metaphorically, I should clarify, drag them by the ear to get them to go have the sets of experiences that I think they need to have to be the kind of adults I would like them to become. And oftentimes I'll be taking them out ice fishing or whatever to go freeze their ass outside. And they're like, well, I don't understand why we got to go do this. I'll say, it's hard for me to explain. One reason would be that you will get to hang out with cooler people when you grow up. I know you don't appreciate that now, but that will be a result of learning the skill set and behaviors that you're going to pick up by like being outside and being uncomfortable being outside.
Well, the important part about ice fishing, especially, is you have to know all the mechanics of it so you can get shit housed while you're doing it. Right.
Exactly.
Like you have to be able to perform all those tasks 6 to 8 beers deep.
Yes.
That's what I have to tell my kids. I'd be like, listen, right now you got to learn how to do this so that later you can overlay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Drunkenness on top of this and still perform. So it's best if you master this skill set now while you're not 21 years old.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it's like it's a major thing. And I just have wrangled them and forced them into a lot of circumstances. And that's a lot of things I talk about in the book too, is, there's a big focus we have a big focus in our household on gardening. We have a big focus in our household on like foraging wild foods, like going out and picking mushrooms and stuff. We eat all wild game at home. The only meat we eat at home is wild game. So we have a major focus on securing food and like disciplines, activities that keep them very rooted in something that, not that technology is not real, but something that's more constant and more real. But I do get what you're saying. Like, you can't raise kids to be like, they're not going to be Luddites, right?
Yeah, you
don't
want to be a fucking Luddite,
and so,
for sure.
And so that's part of the rub of it. But if you look, like, just the way when they do surveys with kids, where like kids rate their own happiness, kids that spend 10 or more hours a week outside rate their own happiness higher than kids who don't.
Yeah. And that's not just an social environmental thing. It's vitamin fucking D.
Yeah.
Which the average American's about 40% deficient on right now.
Yeah.
Like the average American is 40% low on vitamin D. And it affects literally everything. The way you process food, your mood, like how your fucking hormones regulate, from how your hormones regulate to how your brain chemistry works. Vitamin D is really essential in all those things.
Yeah, and the way we're headed as a society due to COVID, more and more people are working from home, and a lot of these offices aren't opening up anymore. And, I'll talk to a bunch of parents, either in the neighborhood or through sports or whatever. And I would say 70% of them now work from home, and they're not going back. And from a business standpoint, I understand it, because you don't have to pay for HR. You don't have to pay for workers' comp, food, electricity, water in the office. PPDs is being sold in downtown Wilmington, which was our, biggest office building there, and they're going to a smaller setting. So more and more people are going to be inside without vitamin D and all the essentials. And our society as a whole is just going to get whiter and whiter, which is not that great for everybody. But, raising the next group of kids to grow up, I don't want to teach them that, hey, you're going to work inside your house all day, so therefore stay inside your house all day. But yeah, that balance is so fucking tough. I'm glad you wrote this book. That's amazing. What does your wife say about it? What's her averages for screen time versus outdoors time?
Man, we're mostly aligned. I think that if I was going to point to like an area of tension between my wife and I, it wouldn't be so much around, she disdains as much as we both work like in our work environment. We both like work on computers, and right, it's just what we do.
Sure.
When I'm out in the field, I'm doing that stuff like this. She like has a lot of these same anxieties. What's funny, and I talk about this a fair bit in the book, is like, if there's a sort of, we had very different upbringings, even though we were brought up in the same state. She did not grow up in the kind of like, more like rough and tumble style outdoor activities that I did. And we have a lot of conversations about safety, right? Like, we have a fish shack in Alaska, and we spend a lot of time out on very big water and very small boats with our kids in places where when people go into the water, they don't last long in that cold water. And then, introducing my wife to the idea that guns are a big part of my kids' lives. Like, that feels dangerous to people. Grizzly bears feels dangerous to people. But what's funny about this ongoing debate my wife and I have is every time we've ever had to bring anybody down to the emergency room, it's been scooters, swing sets, and Legos. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but there's so much, but that's another thing that I encounter so much as like a parent of young kids who spends time around other parents who have young kids is, man, just the fretting and anxiety about perceived danger.
Yeah.
Perceived danger of like, don't touch that hatchet, or like, don't go in the crazy woodlot. There could be some crazy pervert hiding in the neighbor's woodlot, like whatever. It's just, people are crippled. They're crippled by like anxieties and fears about things that don't really warrant that level of concern. Getting bit by, wild animals, getting mauled by bears, you know, encountering weirdos in the woods.
There's a lot less quicksand out there than I was like as a child. I thought that was going to be a big problem.
Yeah.
You know why? Because that was a major plot point on a Gilligan's Island, man. And that shit got in my head. I know. And I live in deep fear of quicksand.
Oh, dude, you're speaking to a kid from Georgia who grew up with Gilligan's Island on TBS, like locally, over and over and over again. Yeah, I was like, quicksand's everywhere, right? And they're like, no, dude, it's in like Amazon, jungles and shit. You're nowhere near it, Ross. You're nowhere near it. But
that thing about fear is, you know, it's like it's a very real deal. It's so real to parents because even like you might be comfortable doing things yourself because you're comfortable you're comfortable assuming a level of risk for yourself, but it becomes really hard to go do activities. Like I'm trying to right now introduce my kid to spearfishing, right? And spearfishing is legitimately, it's like a legitimately hazardous activity.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, or flying in bush planes, single engine aircraft. You're like, how negligent can I be and still be okay?
Does he know how to fly the plane?
Oh no, he doesn't fly it. No, just like riding in a Super Cub. Like,
is he 12? Wait, how old is he? 12?
He'll be, my oldest will be 12 soon. But they've all spent a lot of time in single engine aircraft, you know, planes, bush planes, right?
The reason I asked, my college roommate, he was the youngest to set the record in Ohio for flying, and he was 14. And I was like,
right?
That is dangerous, dude. Yeah.
No, my kid is not ready.
I was like, what the fuck? Like, I think he still holds the record, but like, I was like, your family must be super rich. And he was like, yes, we are. Because I was like, all right, that's not just something you pick up, you know, on the farm of like, well, time to go fly a plane at 14 years old.
Yeah, but it's those questions are serious things. And we spend, you know, where we live, we have a lot of grizzly bears, right? And it's every year, you know, a couple people get killed by grizzlies. We already had a guy get killed by grizzlies not too far from the little place we have already this spring. And so there's like that added element of if you're trying to enforce on your kids like this thing of being like radically engaged with the outside, how do you kind of like explain that exposure to yourself and to others?
Yeah, you're up in Montana. How often do you run into the Dutton family in town?
I haven't run into them, man, but I hear the gunfire at night often.
Yeah. There's quite a bit of gunfights.
I bet you everybody and their mother's fucking moving to Montana now because of Yellowstone.
Yeah, maybe. You know what's funny though? And like, I always take pride in what I haven't watched. I have never, ever, ever seen even a scene from it.
Come on. That's bullshit.
I'm not kidding you, dude. No, I'm not kidding you, man. I never watched Titanic.
I've never seen Titanic.
Really?
Yep.
What world do you guys live in? You never watched Titanic as a kid?
Titanic.
No, there's certain things. I never watched the movie Dirty Dancing. I never watched there's certain things that become like because I want to someday be able to like they could do a study on if they're trying to find someone who hasn't seen this shit, they'll be able to come talk to me.
So you're a fucking film and media contrarian, basically, just lifelong contrarian.
Yeah.
No, because like I'm a big my kid. That's what my kid accuses me of. But I listen to a lot of like Waylon Jennings, right? I listen to the Stones. So it's like, dude, these are the most popular. That's like arguably the most. He's like, you just like it because no one likes it. I'm like, the Rolling Stones. It's like almost empirically the most popular band ever in the history of the world. I'm not a contrarian.
No, I'm a diehard Stones fan.
Shit, right?
Yeah, I'm a diehard Stones fan as well. Obviously, my kid's name is Jagger, so.
I caught that. I didn't know if it was like more like Jagger, like the bird, or Jagger. That's good.
Yeah, never heard of that bird.
Yeah, he doesn't know.
He doesn't have that little dance, does he, your boy?
Not yet. He will, though. He will. He seems like he'd be your type of dude. He's like a little Gronkowski. Like he'll go out into the woods and rip shit up. Like he wouldn't be afraid of a bear. The other one, the older one, would be, but the little one, that kid's got no fucking fear. And that's the other weird thing about kids is you can't control who they're going to be or what traits they take on when they come out, and then you kind of just have to deal with it.
Man, I wonder about that all the time, and it kind of makes the idea, you know. Thinking about the nature versus nurture question, which is sort of like paramount to understanding humans, it does make a lot of times like decisions you make, you wonder, Well, it doesn't matter because maybe the script is already written and you're not going to come in and overlay it. And I remember when I had kids, people would say to me like, what are you going to do if your kid doesn't like to hunt as much as you do? And I would hear that all the time from people. Mm-hmm. And I would say, not many people do. So that wouldn't surprise me. Right. But I think that even looking like right now, my daughter, she has two sort of like career plans. One is that she'll move to Hawaii. She's 9. She'll move to Hawaii and buy a house and a boat, as she explained to me one day, or she's going to move to Los Angeles. Okay. So let's say that happens. I won't feel any different about she'll be my daughter. I'll love her, but I'll know that she went to do that, right? Moved to LA, knowing that she killed her first turkey when she was 8 years old and had the wherewithal, right, to pull that together. Like she'll be armed with certain experiences, certain skill sets, a certain audacity, right? A certain ruggedness of mentality that I don't need it to be that I know that that my kids are going to go down the path I went down and become like outdoor professionals. Like that's not necessarily what I'm not trying to like shape how we can definitely impact our kids' personalities by showing them a lot of love and introducing them to people and experiences that shape them. But ultimately, you're right. There's a lot of like ingredients, right? And you're just one of those ingredients. But I think you can arm them with, like I said, a toughness and a ruggedness that will be suitable no matter what they do, even if it doesn't wind up being the livelihood or adulthood that you imagine for them when you imagine, if you live through your kids and you're like, man, I want my kids to not make the mistakes I made. And I don't have that feeling, but I don't know where they're going. I don't know what they're going to do, but I damn sure know what they're going to be capable of when they go do it.
Right. There's a great quote from this Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt, and it's prepare your children for the road. Don't prepare the road for your children, right? One of the points they make, and the most salient point to me is that you can't do the latter. There's no world in which you can always prepare the road. So, those basic principles of respect for your surroundings extends beyond fucking plants and animals and shit. You know what I mean? It's like broken window theory and criminology, where you learn to treat your environment with respect, and it changes the way you feel about it, whether you're in an office building or a neighborhood or the fucking woods. That kind of shit follows you everywhere you go for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I agree. And, with mine, I try to teach them, it's the same thing with you, like as much as you can to prepare them for whatever they're going to do in life, via teamwork or sports or books and everything else. But you can't control who they're going to be. But you're right. You can at least prepare them for life and everything that's going to happen. And then obviously they'll make their own decisions going from there. But I actually sat down with my kids and asked them what they want to be like twice a year. Because usually it changes, or who you look up to and things like that. More so because I'm also curious of what they're learning and what they're taking in. And it has shifted a little bit. Like initially at like 5, my kid was like, I want to be like Jake Paul, on YouTube. And I was like, all right, cool, man, because he would go to other kids' houses and play dates and things like that, and that would be on. Now he's into books, and he named an author that he wanted to be like. And I was like, all right, cool.
Who was the author?
Well, it's the Captain Underpants.
Every kid reads that. My fucking niece, who just turned 19, read that whole series.
The whole series. So he's got the whole series of Captain Underpants, and he loves to read. Loves it now.
He'll be able to take care of you when you get old if he can hit on a Captain Underpants.
Yeah, I hope so. He's got to learn how to do audiobooks, but whatever, man. We'll train him vocally at least. I'll have the production facility for him. But when he said that, I was like, all right, at least you're learning, and it's getting a little better. And then the youngest one, he just wants to bash his face into things. So it's football or a fireman or things like that. So I always sit down with him a couple times a year and at least ask that question. And then try to see how it changes as they grow up. And partially it's for me as well, where it's like to see how what I'm doing as a father. Because if it keeps getting worse and it's like, hey, I want to be James Dean from porn and not, the Oscar-winning movies, then we got a fucking issue. And that's my fault,
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's always that possibility because I've got a daughter on the way here in about 3 weeks. And that's the one I'm struggling with, because the first two were boys. I don't know what a girl is like. I don't know what that's like in my household besides my wife. But obviously she's grown up and I don't have to worry about her on a day-to-day basis too much, besides buying weird shit off of Amazon. What was it like for you when you had a daughter?
Oh, earlier I mentioned that my wife wasn't, she likes to go fishing with us and stuff, but it wasn't her hunting and fishing and things weren't her primary focus in life at all. What was interesting is the minute we found out we were having a girl, she made like a point to sort of like almost like formally approach me about this. She's like, you need to promise me right now that when it comes to the pursuits that you're into, you will not treat our daughter differently than you're treating our boy. And you will not deny her access to the things that you're offering to our son. And that's the thing that used to, I don't even tell you that used to happen. I got a friend who used to look at the demographics of, he was a historian. He used to look at hunter demographics over time in America. And he had found that if a woman hunted, she hunted because she never had brothers, or she hunted because she was the firstborn.
Really?
Because the old man was like, well, shit, I guess I got to take her. Right. And that was like honestly, it was like the thing. Let me talk about in my own family. Okay. I'm talking extended family and everything. There is not one guy of, I don't know, somewhere between 12 and 20, like males in my, that are alive walking around now in my extended family. Not one of them doesn't hunt and fish to some extent. Of the women, not one of them does.
That's wild.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's definitely there is undeniably some there's physiological factors at play. Okay. There's like emotional and physiological factors at play that have to skew it somehow. Right. If someone told me that without any kind of sociological overlay, there'd still be a split. It wouldn't be 50-50. Let's say it'd be 60-40 or something like that. Right. I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. But that level of split is definitely a societal component of that, of how we've sort of defined what is acceptable behavior. And maybe, we're all products of our time, right? But I definitely want, the minute I knew I was going to have a daughter, I was already envisioning her as I'm like, okay, if I'm going to have a daughter, I'm going to have a daughter that knows how to shoot a gun real good. I don't know why. I just felt that way. And I think that had I been born 50 years before, that would not have been the thing that jumped in my head. I might have had some idea, I'm going to protect her from all that. And she's going to be very feminine. I don't know. It's hard to sort out, man. But in my generation, it's absolutely true. All the dudes I grew up with, all the guys I grew up with hunted and fished. And just the women I grew up with did not. And it's not all some physiological thing. It's a lot of how dads view spending time with their daughters. And it historically has been a lower priority, or they lived a very different experience, right? They lived a very different experience for their daughters than they did for their boys. And I don't have that. I don't have interest in that, man. That hasn't been what I'm into at all with my girl.
I know you don't watch Yellowstone or 1883 or anything, but what you just described is literally 1883. It's a strong female character who hunts, kicks ass, and ends up getting killed at the end. But whatever, man.
That was too bad.
Yeah, spoiler alert. If you haven't seen it, tough shit at this point, one of the highest rated shows on TV. We're all good. But that's interesting you say that because just thinking about my wife, she grew up, with her father, and she played softball. And I was like, why were you in competitive softball? Like, why were you so into it? She was like, my dad was a Yankees fan, and it was a good way to connect with my dad. So it makes sense with, everything you're describing, where it's just like, now that you really think about it, if you're a firstborn, for sure, or you're with your father all the time, for sure. And if she really does want to head out to LA, killing turkeys is the first thing she should know, having lived there for 18 years. Dude, there's a lot of fucking turkeys out in LA. And what did she want to do? Did she say, like, an actress or something?
Oh, I don't know. I've had to go there for meetings. And I would, she's kind of like my buddy when it comes to, if I got to go do a business meeting, I'll sometimes bring her along. And so I don't know, the just something about the palm trees and shit really speaks to her. But no, she's 9, man. She doesn't have a concrete sense of what she's going to do there, but just something about it seems like the place she feels that's the place she belongs, right? In a very kind of young, some semi-innocent way. She's drawn to that now. So yeah, we'll see what happens to her. But for now, I want her to participate in those things. Like, I've never been, you just mentioned someone growing up playing softball. I've never been into organized sports of any sort, man. I was not into it. And that's another, I was talking about, I keep betraying all the points of conflict I have with my spouse. That's another one, is I discourage my kids from doing organized sports because I like to have time for us to roam around, right? And the thing about it is, though, that I have a certain like enthusiasm and skill set for a certain group of activities. I want to like take my kids and show them the world as I see it. And I want them to see what it's like to like be with someone who has like an infectious enthusiasm about a certain lifestyle, a knowledge base about it, right? A proficiency at it. So I feel that that's the place where I want to engage with my kids. If I was a mega sports fan and super into sports, I would probably have some version. I would have some version of that was more sports themed. I don't think, though, right now I would sit here writing a book. Like, I can't picture a dad writing a book of like how I struggled to get my kids into sports. Maybe that's a book. I don't know. But it's just like a different thing because it seems to be an easier path, right? But inviting them into understanding their ecology and the natural world, there's just more. I feel like there's more conflict. There's more inertia against you when you're trying to do that style.
Yeah, well, what did you do when you guys were in the big city then? When you were in Seattle or New York? Because you don't have any of that anywhere around you. I've lived in New York a couple of times in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, you have nothing like that of the sort, and you're probably, truthfully, an hour and a half away from it. What did you guys do when you were in the cities together?
I was tenacious about it, man. I didn't take no for an answer. Like, I would, and it's hard too, dude. I'm not even going to come and act like, if you got a bunch of little kids and they need to have like nap times and there's diapers and shit and snacks, it's hard. And I think that a lot of people give up, but we would find it where it was. I mean, we would even, this is going to sound crazy, man, but at times I taught my kids how to catch street pigeons, and we would catch street pigeons and I would show them how to cook pigeons. We would go to the park and go to the weirdest, wildest places in the parks, man. We would find bluegills spawning in Prospect Park in Brooklyn and fish for them. I mean, I really went out of my way. We'd go below oak trees and gather acorns. I showed them how to make acorn flour at a young age. We'd find all kinds of wild edibles. We just do like wild stuff. We'd roam around and I'd be like, see that bird? Like, if you're in New York, you're going to see 3 birds. You're going to see, for like within 10 minutes, you're going to see English sparrows, European starlings, and street pigeons, right?
Yeah.
Street pigeons be like, here's an interesting bird. It's from Eurasia. In their native range, they live on cliff faces. Isn't that interesting how they found that habitat in a city? Like, cliff-dwelling birds live in this city. They were brought here probably originally by the French along the St. Lawrence Seaway as a food item. Like, that's the thing people eat, man. And like, do that. I even at an apartment I had, we even caught, it's long enough now, I'm not worried about getting in trouble for it anymore. Caught squirrels. I showed my kids how to skin squirrels and cook them. I mean, I took them like we have a little shack in Alaska. We'd spend time up there and do all kinds of other stuff. but we lived it on a day-to-day basis of like engaging with nature. We grew food. We'd do anything we could to like get planter boxes out and make and show them how to make food. We'd go up to, you could go up to the the reservoirs that lead into the municipal water system for New York. We fished all that stuff, caught Lyme disease up there off ticks, wandering around. We just like I wanted them to be, even in that environment, I wanted them to be that if you put a bug in their hand, the last thing they would ever think to do is say ew, right?
Yeah.
And they don't say ew when you put a bug in their hand. And so I don't think it's impossible, but you got to be tenacious.
Did anybody ever catch you in New York killing pigeons?
No, never.
How do you go about that? Because there's so many people everywhere you go, including the parks. Like, dude,
I'm not kidding you, man. We would sometimes go to a spot. I would show them how to do this. We'd go to a spot and lay a little bit of seed out, just sitting on a bench until you had them real close and just snatch them and put them in your pocket. I'm not kidding you, man.
That's some Mike Tyson shit. You know that, right?
Oh yeah, he was a pigeon fancier.
Yeah,
but it was like I didn't. They're not a they're a deleterious exotic. They're not if wildlife managers could wave a magic wand and have the pigeon disappear, they would wave it. Same with the other two birds I named, European starlings and English sparrows, deleterious non-natives, completely unprotected birds. They're like an exotic. They're an exotic bird that is regarded as a pest.
Wow, I didn't know that.
They prey on and destroy native cavity nesting birds, crop stuff. Like they're much maligned, So yeah, but we, like I said, just like and that's another thing I think that I want to demonstrate to them is like, make a plan. What it's just to have exposure to people who, when they get up in the morning, they have in their head they're going to do something, and there's nothing in the world that's going to prevent them from doing it.
That's incredible. What about the squirrels? You had to shoot them, right?
No, I caught them.
How? How do you catch a squirrel?
Are you familiar with the thing where you put? I don't know. There's the body grip. I don't know if you're familiar with something called a 110 conibear. It's a type of body gripping trap. When I was a kid, we fur trapped. I was big into fur trapping, and did like muskrat, mink, raccoon, beaver, otter, red fox, all the commercial fur bears. And it was a type of trap we used for muskrats.
Man, I was big into fur trapping in college, but obviously I'm married now, so not so much anymore. Let me ask you this.
I got into we trapped for my brothers and I. We trapped. You started when I was 10 years old, trapping for the commercial markets, and I stuck with that till I was 21. So now I haven't sold a fur since 1996, but I trap with my kids now for, we trap for different fur bears. We trap now, show them how to put up the pelts, and we deal with the meat and everything. Yeah. I want them to see it, even though there's not a viable commercial market right now, but I'd like them to understand those like kind of like ancestral survival skills. Right.
Right. I mean, that is one of those things I've asked people who are survival specialists before, something like, what would you take if you were going to be stranded somewhere? Usually the first answer is a knife that's appropriate for that environment, because you can kill, skin, peel, whatever. You can construct things like clothing, footwear, and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting skill to know how to peel the skin off an animal. Or, that sounds brutal, but it can become necessary at some point.
Yeah, and if you're going to make a second thing on your list, I'd want your listeners to understand that you might want to have it be a couple 110 conibears.
Or maybe some way to purify water as well. Although you can construct things to do that as well if the environment's good.
Yeah.
Like if you can make fire, you can make charcoal, and then you can filter pretty much anything with that.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways, yeah.
Let me ask you this. Do you follow the news more closely now that you're a father? And everything else that's going on, like this fucking "Don't Say Gay" bill that's happening in Florida. Like, as a parent, that scares the shit out of me. And like, I find myself reading more about what could possibly be taught in classrooms or things that are going on, just simply for my kids, because I want to be in the know about this. Do you pay attention and focus more on the news
I've always but I've always focused very intensely on the news, and I think that like many people, I developed more of I think I probably developed more of an immediate need for constant news after the 9/11 terror attacks. You know, I think that like you got this sense that like, I don't know, I was in graduate school at the time, but all of a sudden came away with this sense that it's like something you have to pay attention to moment by moment. And I don't know that I ever broke from that. Like if someone's going to go and look at sort of like the long-term impacts of those days, one for me might be this feeling that like when I wake up in the morning, I still, all these years later, like I grab my phone, sort of wondering if a thing like that has gone down. Right. Yeah. And so I follow the news, but with my kids, no, like, you know, the culture war stuff, I know there's a lot of anxiety about the culture wars, but we kind of like my wife and I, we talk so much with our kids, and I feel like have just opened their minds up to a lot of stuff in our own avenue. I do worry about what they're getting in other places, but I'm aware that they're just going to be picking up a lot of noise everywhere. And rather than thinking I'm going to effectively shelter them from damaging perspectives or learning about things that I don't think they're ready to learn about, we've probably advanced it pretty quickly to where there's not much we don't. I mean, there's some like obvious, real notable exceptions, but there's not much that we don't talk about. And we also talk a lot about different ways that different people consider things, right? And we focus on that. So when it comes to this, my anxieties about any kind of like insanity out there right now, I just like, I don't know that I feel any different about it from a parenting perspective as I do just from an individual perspective. The particular bill you're talking about, I know that it had been described that way, but then when I went and read about what it actually was and how it, and whether or not it would differ from common practices right now, I was surprised to see that it was being marketed as such.
Same. Dude, I was shocked.
I was like, hold it, that's what it is.
That's exactly what happened to me. So I kept hearing it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to actually read this. I'm going to read this bill and see what it is. And it was like, you couldn't, talk to students K through 3. So, kindergarten through 3rd grade about gays and transgenders and, different.
No, it's not that. It's that you can't talk to them about any sexuality or any gender theory.
Right.
Not just gay or trans.
Correct.
None.
Yeah.
But then it was pointed out that no one is.
Yeah, no one is doing it, but they want the option to do it. And I was like, once I read it, I was like, why do you want that option anyways?
Well, it's the same reason that the CDC is having the Justice Department appeal this decision on mask mandates, because Jen Psaki said it herself that we want to preserve that right for the CDC in the future, or that power, rather, is what she said.
Power, correct, yeah.
Yeah, so they knew, and that the CDC doesn't have the authority either to do any of that shit, right? It's nonsense. So they're just trying to intentionally obfuscate things. That's all it is. Like to hold on to power for a later date. That's what it is. But I mean, regardless of whether it's a political issue or not, if anybody in any circumstance, whether it be in the workplace, your family, maybe you're on a trip somewhere, they want to talk to your 5 to 8-year-old about sex and then get mad when you say no, fucking red flag.
Yeah.
Like that, there's no circumstance where that's okay.
No.
Ever. And I've seen so many debates about this on in the media and on Twitter and shit. Just like, and I've said to quite a few teachers, you don't have the right to speak in private to my child.
Yeah. That
is not a right that another adult outside of myself and my wife have.
Right.
The end of that conversation. You know what I mean? Like the premise is that their rights are being denied because they can't share these things about themselves in the classroom. Like, no, dude, they're not. You don't have the right to talk to my fucking kid without my fucking permission.
Right.
Why would you even think that you do? And that's a problem. That's the bigger problem than to just this one individual issue, is that the state is trying to co-parent your children now, and they can go fuck themselves.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like to me. And part of my anxiety towards that and other shit is like, I didn't grow up with it, so none of it seems natural, now, and it's hard to navigate because I didn't grow up with these issues. Like, it is just, I feel like the last 5 years, 6 years in particular, since Trump was in office, that it's just more and more shit that they're trying to force feed kids for really no reason. And then again, you're trying to navigate it and trying to figure out the conversation you're actually going to have with them. So yesterday, I got an email from the school that's, don't be alarmed that there's going to be a ton of fire trucks, police cars, and ambulances outside the school. We're just holding a lockdown, right? It's going to be a lockdown, and that's what it is, or whatever. And so I go home, and I'm here at work, and I go home and ask my wife. I was like, what is this? Is this for like an active shooter situation? And she goes, yeah, that's exactly what it's for. She's like, I was in the school, and they're teaching that now twice a year in pretty much every classroom across America if there is an active shooter in a classroom. That's something I never had to deal with growing up at all. Like, that wasn't ever discussed. There was no school shootings. That was past my era, but now, it is happening more frequently. Do you talk to your kids about it? And if so, what do you tell them if there's like an active shooter that comes into school?
We had to have that conversation because of the training, the same thing you're talking about. And then one day, I don't understand how this happened. Some guy with a machete winds up in a standoff with the police right outside the school.
Was it Danny Trejo?
What's that?
Was it Danny Trejo?
No, I didn't catch his name. And it was like coincidence that he happened to be there. But anyways, they had to do all this protocol. And yeah, I had to explain to my kids, and it's, you never know where the questioning is going to go, but I had to explain to my kids that there is a thing, that there are, very disturbed individuals that go and do this. And you feel like there's a little bit of innocence lost all the time. But I think that's probably why I've generally opened up. I've generally, if you're going to rate me against a panel of my peers, you'd probably find that I am more comfortable introducing more adult type subject matter to my young kids than many people are. But again, we do it the way we want to do it, right? Mm-hmm. And feel that it's how we're going to do it. And a lot of it's informed by when I was exposed to things, how I found out. And I think a lot of parents naively think that somehow times have changed and their kids aren't going to find out about things. As a kid, I knew about everything way before my parents thought I knew about it. Sure. I'm talking about matters of sex, violence, drug and alcohol use, whatever. You lived a secret existence, right? Mm-hmm. It coming into junior high, whatever. So I have tried to remind myself, honestly, man, at what age did you become aware of X, Y, or Z? And it was, if you really, I grew up in Michigan, public school system. It was shockingly young, if you're honest to yourself about it. So I would rather be the one that kicks that stuff off with my kids and gets the ball rolling on that shit than have it be that they learned about things the way I learned about them, which was sort of absent from my parents' input out of their idea that they were protecting some naivete in their children. It's like a correction I did over, my parents got a lot right. That's an area where I felt they were a little lacking. I mentioned this in the book too. I remember the one sex conversation I ever had with my old man. We were out fishing salmon in Lake Michigan, and I saw a boat called Danny's Wet Dream, dude. I said, I was talking about why that guy's boat was named that. That inspired, I was probably 11, 12. That inspired the only conversation about sex I ever had with my old man. I am not kidding you. And it was trying to explain what that was. My kids from a very young age, I mentioned this story in the book too, man, cleaning fish. You got some that got sperm sacs. You got some that got egg sacs. We've been talking about that shit since they're 3 years old. Right? They have no question about what needs to happen to create life.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I'm thinking back on it now that you said it. I don't think my parents ever taught me about that. I never really sat down and had those types of talks with them. And there is this fine line of naivete and innocence lost that you were talking about, where you're like, all right, fuck, what is the age? What is the conversation? How do you breach that? I think, let's see, the first time I saw nudity on screen, I think was like 7th grade. And that's when I was like, oh shit, all right, things are going down, and I get what this is. And I didn't
know that was a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, whoa, what's going on there? And it was from a babysitter who had left it on. It was like Cinemax or something, and left the room. Yeah. And I was like, oh shit, okay, that looks fun.
I remember one day my dear friend Ronnie, he had his girls, I don't know, when they were late high school, and I was quite a bit younger than him. I was in college, and he said, man, what are kids up to at my daughter's age? And I'm like, well, let me tell you. And he's like, no, I don't want to hear it. Never mind. But I tend to be more of a realist about that things slip through the cracks. My brother Danny, man, he's got 2 kids, and he was one day marveling. He's like, I don't understand. Like, me and my wife have never mentioned princesses. We've never watched princess shit. Like, I don't have any. This is when his daughter was very young. Where is the princess shit coming from? Like, it's not from us. I'm with her all the time. I know what she's exposed to. Where did that come from? And it's just like, your kids are sponges, and they're just picking it up.
Yeah.
And I would rather lead the charge on some of this stuff that I know that they're going to be hearing about. I think you're going to be more accurately frame it up. My wife already gives my 12-year-old boy, that dude, he doesn't even have any desire to drink, but that dude, he has had more lectures about drinking and driving. I'm like, wait, give him a decade. What are you lecturing about this for?
That's hilarious. The only thing I'm happy about is my kids are young enough that the cars will drive for themselves. So when they go out and shit like that, it's like, great. So you can just press the button and you'll get home safely. So that I'm at least excited about. But let's see, 12. Yeah, I mean, shit. He'll probably have his first beer in a couple years, right?
He had to recently do the sex. It's not sex ed, but it's more like. It's about your own body, right? So it's not where the bodies come together, but it's at school. It's sort of I don't know what the hell they cover, puberty, all that, right? With a boy. And you had to sign a little permission form that he can sit through this. And he comes back from this, and he explained that that a classmate of his wept through the whole presentation. It's so traumatized. But my wife, all through dinner, what questions do you have? What are your questions? What do they not cover? What do they cover that you want to know more about? And he's like, no, I'm good. Got it. Eventually I said, man, buddy, you better come up with a question, because she's not going to leave you alone.
Well, the weird thing about it is when you grow up, there's always that one kid who knows more than everybody else. And you're like, man, was it shitty parenting or was it great parenting? And I still don't have the answer to that.
No, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this will be the next thing. Maybe when my kids are when they jump to the next age bracket, maybe this is an idea I'll explore in a book, is how you handle what my findings were about how you handle adult subject, how you sort of pave the way for a realistic understanding and ability to cope with adult subject matter, right? Without weeping through sex. Right. Sex ed.
Yeah, because there was this one kid. We moved to Florida for a year. I'm from Georgia originally, but we moved to Florida for 1 year, and for whatever reason, those kids were super fucking advanced. And I get there, and it's 7th grade, and I don't know, 5, 6 of the dudes in my class were having sex. And I remember turning to somebody and I was like, wait, what? They're having sex back there in this bedroom?
Yeah, but that's
no shit. No shit. And I was like, I remember going to my buddy. I was like, man, one of them's going to get pregnant probably. You just can't have sex like that. You're going to have a baby in 7th grade. And I didn't know anything in 7th. I knew nothing about sex or anything in 7th grade whatsoever. But these kids were so fucking advanced, and I was like, there's always a few of them when you're like, did you have an awful parent or did you just know? You know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know the right answer. So maybe that's what your wife is trying to do. Of like, hey, I want to make sure all the bases are covered, so that way, in case you're around some kids who are super fucked up in advance, at least you'll know what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that she's trying to, like let's say someone presented them the sort of knowledge and information about sex that they might get in 7th grade. And I guess that she would prefer them to be able to say something like, actually, that's not even kind of right. So maybe, yeah, it's a mystery. I think that I had a conversation. There's two like parenting things that stick with me all the time. Is two conversations I have with people. I have a friend who was a superintendent, a public school superintendent in New Mexico, as well as a principal. And one day we were talking, and I was saying to him how sometimes I worried that I was too hard on my kids. And he said, after a career of dealing with kids and parents, he said, I find that the ones that are too hard on them have it just about right. I have another friend who has dealt with family law, right? Mm-hmm. And he, after a long career in that, he one day says to me, I can tell you the one surefire way to fuck a kid up. And that's when no one cares about him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And so all these little like conversations we're having about like the details of like, at what point do they know, what an erection is, or, whatever the hell. Right.
Yeah.
The fact that the fact that there's two parents sitting down debating how to handle it is probably everything that's needed. Mm-hmm. Like whatever the decision they make, the fact that there's two people actually talking about it as it pertains to a child is an indicator of something good happening. Yeah. Whatever the hell decision they make.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we all, for a long, very, very long time, have had, at least in the West, a very general set of shared values about protecting our family and being homesteaders and all this other bullshit that kind of comes with it, like property rights, all the things that came out of, British common law and the economic writings back there. But it's also a reflection of how every generation of good people has tried to figure out how to navigate the time that they're in. Mm-hmm. And you learn certain lessons from your parents about what they did, but then the environment changes so much that a lot of the lessons that you learned from them are now obsolete.
Yeah.
You still have the principles that you developed as a prism through which to view the world and make decisions. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there's always like there are these things that have lasted millennia. Like teach a man to fish and you help him for the rest of his life. Yeah. Like the idea of empowering somebody with a skill that they can use on their own to build their own shit. That's an idea that's 6,000 years old, basically, mm-hmm. right? Like it's some of these things don't change. You know what I mean? We don't do a very good job, I think, as a society of pointing that out enough. Like it's a lot more clickbaity to describe how crazy everything is and what all the problems are. But it's not as much as we have in the way of self-help books, whatever the fuck that means these days, and life coaches and dumb shit like that. None of them seem to communicate that there are very simple answers to a lot of these things. Now, you may not like what the answer is, but it exists, and it's out there. And usually it involves a little bit of discomfort for you.
Yeah. But articles about learning and teaching, like, it's not sexy enough. Like, that doesn't get clicks. It doesn't get advertising, doesn't get anything else. And being a parent is obviously a thankless job. You just hope that they stay alive and outlive you, and that's kind of the goal. You hope they're great people. You hope you raised them right, and then they outlive you, and then you kind of tip your cap and move on. And that's about all we can do. I think what you're doing with your kids is great because all of the skills, and Dan talks about this all the time. Like if we hit another pandemic or the apocalypse or some type of civil war, I want my kids to be with your kids. So that way shit can go down in a proper way. You're on a short list of parents. You, Tim Kennedy. I've got him. I've got the full list. Ray Cash Cares in there. I've got the full list of people that I want them hanging out with, and you're doing great things. Last question for you. I know you're a busy guy and you got to get out of here.
Yeah, I got to run, but yeah, hit me with one more.
And you've had an agent for a gajillion years. How amped was he about the Netflix show that he was like, "Holy shit, we can sell books forever"?
He plays along. I'm sure he was probably excited about that. Yeah, he's probably excited about that. It's good because just doing, being involved in a lot of different media projects, my books continue to do well. And if I was going to die and have something chiseled on my tombstone, even though I was just telling my kids the other day where to put my ashes, but if I was, I would much rather have writer chiseled on there than TV host. That's sure as shit. So I'll write till I can't. It's definitely how I think of it. It's definitely how I think of myself. Even though writing is so different now because, as you guys know, it takes so many different forms, right? Including like what we're doing right now, right? Dealing with a set of ideas and articulating them. So that hasn't changed. It's been a long time since I was a magazine writer, but I still love books and like to do books.
Yeah, and you're great at it. Your new book is out on May 3rd. It's
Correct.
Outdoor Kids in an Inside World. You're one of the best in the biz and just a fantastic dude to hang out with. Last question for you is the Drinkin' Bro of the Week. Who is someone that has inspired you, helped you become the person you are today, or maybe even inspired you to write this book?
They don't have to be famous, do they?
Nope. Not at all.
When I was in 10th grade, I had a teacher named Robert Heaton. And, a person has like a lot of different genesises in life, or however the plural is. But I think that had he not existed, I would not have become a writer. That, like, when I go back, that's like the first sort of point at which like a thing happened that set some things in motion. So, Mr. Bob Heaton, just like a very careful, charismatic English teacher plugging away in a public high school in Michigan, man.
Does he know what you've become?
Oh yeah, we stay in touch. He's well into his 80s, but no, he's really, he stays because he knows that, I need to, because he knows that I relied on him. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you for your time today. Everybody go and check out this book. Steve, you're one of the best in the biz. We appreciate you being here today. And come back anytime, please. Just keep writing books and coming back on the show. For D'Anthony Holloway, I'm Ross Patterson. This is the Drinkin' Bros podcast. Good night, everyone.